In today's video, we're going to explore one of the most tragic and haunting maritime disasters in British history. This catastrophe claimed the lives of over 200 men, many of whom had just survived the horrors of World War I, only to perish within sight of their homeland. They had made it through the war, only to be lost in peace. This is the story of HMY Iolaire. On the evening of December 31st, 1918, HMY Iolaire departed from Kyle of Loch Calsh on the Scottish mainland, bound for Stornoway on the Isle of Lewis. The yacht was originally built in 1881 as a luxury vessel named Amalthea and had been requisitioned by the Admiralty during the war for patrol and anti-submarine duties. Renamed Iolaire, meaning eagle in Gaelic, she was now tasked with bringing home naval reservists who had served valiantly during the Great War. The Iolaire was designed to accommodate around 100 passengers, but on this fateful night, she was carrying nearly 3 times that number, around 280 men. The end of the First World War had flooded ports with soldiers, sailors, and reservists desperate to return home. Transport infrastructure was stretched thin, and the usual ferries and steamers were overwhelmed by the sudden demand. In the rush to get men back to the Outer Hebrides for the new year, the Iolaire, originally intended for far smaller passenger loads, was pressed into service. There was no formal passenger list, and many of the men boarded without official record-keeping. Some reportedly encouraged or waved through in the spirit of wartime camaraderie. The majority were from Lewis, Harris, and Berneray, tight-knit island communities that had already endured staggering losses during the war. For many families, this return marked not just the end of conflict, but a long-awaited reunion. The atmosphere on board was a blend of exhaustion, relief, and quiet joy, as the men looked forward to celebrating the new year with their loved ones for the first time in years. For those who had survived the trenches and the seas of war, home was finally within reach, just hours away. As the Iolaire approached Stornoway Harbor in the early hours of January 1st, 1919, a severe gale was blowing from the south, accompanied by heavy seas and poor visibility. At 1:55 a.m., disaster struck. The yacht veered off course and ran aground on the notorious rocks known as the Beasts of Hull, located less than a mile from the safety of the harbor and a mere 20 yards from the shore. The impact was catastrophic, and the vessel began to founder amidst the tumultuous waves. Panic ensued as the men struggled to survive. Many were trapped below deck, while others were swept into the freezing, stormy waters. The Iolaire's lifeboats were launched, but were quickly overwhelmed by the rough seas, capsizing and adding to the chaos. The frigid temperatures and heavy uniforms made swimming nearly impossible, and many who attempted to reach the shore were dashed against the jagged rocks or succumbed to hypothermia. Amidst the turmoil, acts of heroism emerged. Among the chaos and crashing waves, one man's actions became the lifeline, literally, for those still clinging to hope. John Finlay MacLeod, a 32-year-old seaman from the port of Ness, somehow managed to break free from the wreckage. The Iolaire had struck the rocks just outside Stornoway Harbor, and the sea around her was a maelstrom of jagged stone, timber, and oil-slicked water. Most attempts to swim were doomed. The freezing temperatures alone could paralyze a man in minutes. But MacLeod, a strong swimmer and experienced sailor, braved the violent surf with a heaving line, a lightweight rope normally used to guide a larger cable or hawser ashore. With waves crashing over him and the sound of men crying out behind him, he pushed forward through the darkness. After a brutal struggle against the current, he somehow reached the rocky shore at Holme Point. Bloodied and exhausted, MacLeod managed to haul the line onto land and secure it around a rock outcropping. This rope became a lifeline, literally, for others still stranded on the wreck. Several men were able to drag themselves hand over hand through the freezing waters to safety. Thanks to McLeod's bravery and sheer determination, around 40 lives were saved that night. It was a small glimmer of hope in an otherwise catastrophic loss, and for many families in the Western Isles, his name would never be forgotten. This courageous act is credited with saving between 30 and 40 men as they used the rope to traverse the perilous gap between the sinking ship and the land. The aftermath of the disaster was devastating. Of the approximately 280 men on board, over 200 perished, including 181 islanders. The exact number of casualties remains uncertain due to incomplete records and the overcrowded nature of the vessel. The loss was profound, with nearly every household in the affected communities mourning the death of a loved one. The islanders had already endured the loss of around 1,000 men during the war, and the Iolaire tragedy compounded their grief immeasurably. In the days following the sinking, the bodies of the deceased were recovered and laid to rest in cemeteries across the island. The Western Front Association has preserved pension cards for many of those lost, providing a poignant reminder of the individuals who perished. The community's sorrow was palpable, and the collective trauma led to a prolonged period of mourning and silence regarding the event. Investigations into the cause of the disaster yielded inconclusive results. 2 commissions of inquiry were established, but neither could determine definitively why the Iolaire ended up on the Beasts of Holm. There were no surviving officers who could explain the sequence of events leading to the grounding. Speculations ranged from navigational errors to the severe weather conditions, but no official blame was assigned. In the years that followed, the memory of the Iolaire disaster was shrouded in silence. The immense loss and the circumstances of the tragedy made it a difficult subject for the grieving communities. It wasn't until 1958 that a memorial was erected at Holm to honor those who perished. The monument stands as a somber reminder of the lives lost and the resilience of the survivors and their families. The centenary of the disaster in 2019 marked a significant moment of reflection and commemoration. A special centenary service was held, attended by dignitaries and descendants of those who were on board. The Commonwealth War Graves Commission ensured that the graves and memorials of the victims were meticulously maintained, honoring their sacrifice and preserving their memory for future generations. The sinking of HMY Iolaire remains one of the most tragic maritime disasters in British history, particularly poignant because it occurred at the dawn of peace, just as these brave men were returning home. The story serves as a powerful reminder of the perils faced by those at sea and the enduring impact of loss on tight-knit communities. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching. If you found this story interesting, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. And if you know of another historical disaster you'd like covered, let me know in the comments below.